or your coffee or whatever and enjoy the presentation. I'm Stacy Chandler. I am a marketing specialist with Advantage Kentucky Alliance. And I just want to welcome everybody and make sure you know that we are going to record the presentation today. So if you would go ahead and put yourselves on mute, I'd appreciate that. But feel free to put any questions in the chat that you have. And Kim Crawford and I will be monitoring that through the presentation, and then also there will be some time for question and answers at the end. Before we get started, I wanted to give a brief introduction of Advantage Kentucky Alliance for those who may not be familiar with us. We are part of the National MEP program, which is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. It's a national network. Every state has a representative, and we are the one for Kentucky. Our goal is to retain and grow manufacturing in Kentucky, especially when it relates to small and medium-sized manufacturers. We provide access to resources and consultants that you might need to help with anything from bottom line operations to top line growth. Our consultations are no cost to you. So if that's something that you need, if you find that you're facing a challenge or looking for some growth strategies, just put your information in the chat. You can put it privately if you want to, Kim or myself, and then we'll make sure you get your consultation. So now I just don't want to take too much time, but I want to introduce Kent to everybody. Kent is a client service manager with Advantage Kentucky Alliance. So he very well could be the person that does your consultation, depending on what part of the state you're in. Kent takes care of our western part of Kentucky. He has led in many areas, including manufacturing and financial services, as well as coaching. He built, owned, and operated a state-of-the-art production facility, while also leading the industry as the chairman of its national association. He was selected to represent Kentucky on some international trade missions. For over a decade, he's guided individuals and companies towards success while working in the financial services sector. He also has coached athletics for over 30 years, and he has won many state championships. Some of the athletes he's coached have even achieved success at the college level and national championships, and participated in the U.S. Olympic trials. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kent and put myself on mute, but feel free to reach out to us in the chat if there's any need you have during the presentation. Thanks, Kent.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it, and appreciate seeing the rest of you guys on the webinar today. Excuse me. My name is Kent Wade, and I am the client service manager for the MEP for Kentucky, which is Advantage Kentucky Alliance. I will say good morning to you guys because here in Western Kentucky, it's still morning. I see Jody Howe. I know he's a Western Kentuckier, and probably some others may be, but Kentucky is unique in that it's got two different time zones, and so we get to enjoy the morning time a little bit longer. But what I am here to do today is talk about Supplier Scouting, and that is a service that the MEP provides to every MEP center, and AKA is unique in that we've developed a system that we utilize within the national network, and it is here to help the manufacturers throughout the Commonwealth, and mostly with the focus of supply chain. There's a big need for supply chain redevelopment, especially after the COVID pandemic, and so we're here to help fill that need. I've got a slide deck that I'd like to throw up here, so I'm going to try to share the screen here, and let's see. There we go. We'll see how successful that is. Is it up and running, guys?
Yes, we see you.
All right.
Your screen, I mean.
The screen. Okay.
Excellent.
All right. So let me get going on my part of it. Hold on just a second. All right. So hold on just a second. I see it going on your all side. There we go. Okay. So my name is Kent Wade, and just a little bit about me. I have a degree in management as well as an MBA in finance, which helped me in business to own and operate a manufacturing company here in Kentucky. And also, I'm a former banker, worked in several different states. And as Stacy mentioned as well, I also coach swimming both on high school level and then on the USA side. So from that, you learn a lot about competition. You also learn about how to use the best tools, how to be efficient, and how to connect. And so from that experience, I've learned a lot about supply chain and how to connect companies, especially with needs. Stacy mentioned information about the MEP National Network, and so I'd like to just kind of elaborate on that just a little bit. The MEP is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and that is operated through the U.S. Department of Commerce, and underneath that umbrella is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, many of you all probably utilize some sort of either data or information or resources through the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So you're familiar with that, and also the acronym of NIST. But within the MEP network, every state has one, has an MEP center. And then Puerto Rico, as a U.S. territory, also has an MEP center. So um, that network is formed by all these MEP centers working together in order to try to bring tools, technologies, resources, and services to the manufacturing sector. Every MEP center is basically challenged with one goal, and that is to grow the economy through manufacturing. And that's our sole purpose in life. And what we do is we assist manufacturers in that effort. And then our grade card, if you will, is the impacts that that are obtained through those interactions that we have with the manufacturers. So that's just a quick overview of the MEPs. Kentucky's MEP is Advantage Kentucky Alliance, and a couple of points, or a few points about AKA, as we call it. We are uniquely capable to help companies reconnect the supply chain. That's one of the services that we provide among a multitude of services. And a couple of points I'm going to get to in the presentation. AKA is designated by the president to perform that task. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're also prepared to perform that task, and that task is at no cost for either the requesting companies or the supplying companies. So we're going to talk about those points in the presentation. So one of the things that that people are kind of thrown off a little bit is supplier scouting as a term. That's not something that you hear usually in the vernacular. So Supplier Scouting is a service that AKA provides. It creates B2B connections for supply chain items needed by companies. And what we mean by that is that in a supply chain, there's always somebody who needs an item and somebody who can supply an item. So what AKE does through this supplier scouting process is we bring those two together. Whether you're a requester or you're a provider, we have the ability to connect you up. The primary way that AKE does that is through our client service managers, but we are a team of roughly 25 to 30 professionals. And so all of us are out in the marketplace interacting with manufacturers and suppliers. And so we have a pretty good thumbprint on what's going on within the Commonwealth. And we are made up of, we have 4 client service managers across the state. And Bill Rouse is in Northern Kentucky, Dwight Butler is in Central Kentucky, Billy Ray Hughes is in Eastern Kentucky, and I cover the 26 westernmost counties of the Commonwealth. And so we're constantly traveling back and forth, but we also have service providers that we dispatch to different clients for specific needs. And those service providers are in and out of manufacturing facilities. So we're all talking amongst each other to try to find out who does what within the state. And so if you are a company that either has a supply chain need, you're a requester, or you have additional capacity, the best way to do to connect up with us is to contact the AKA representative within your area. I didn't put the email addresses and that type of thing up there, but that's something that Stacy and Kim can supply if after this presentation you have a need, then she can, or they can connect you up with the right person. But by connecting up with the representatives, then they funnel those requests to me. And I am AKA's, for lack of a better term, supplier scouter. And I utilize the MEP database as well as several other databases in order to try to come up with companies that will match up with whatever the request is. So that's how a company participates. Is first of all connecting up with the right people at AKA. Secondarily, whenever you make that connection, especially connect up with me, there's specific information that we need in order to interact with the MEP National Network. And I'll kind of just breeze through this laundry list. But the primary items that we need is, first of all, describe the item or the application, and also the end use of the item. So if you're requesting a particular widget or a gadget, provide the description, and if there is a particular way that you take that item and apply it, then describe that in use. Also, the dimensions and the size and the tolerances. We need to know the specifications. So if you're requesting an item and you're going to ask for a manufacturer to produce that particular item, we need to know what the specifications are. If there's any specialized material that is required in manufacturing that item, we'll need to know that, because that could create another supply chain request trying to find that specific material. If there are any certifications that are required in manufacturing that item, or sometimes even certifications required in the distribution chain, that are the channels. Um, any certifications that are required in producing and transporting that item, we need to know about it. And then just a brief description of the manufacturing process. If you're a requester uh, of the item, you may not know exactly what the manufacturing process is. You just may need the item, the widget or a gadget. But if you have capacity and you want to try to gain customers, you might describe just briefly what the manufacturing process is, so that somebody can understand what you as a manufacturer will need to do in order to make that. The potential business volume is important, very important, because that's going to communicate to a manufacturer, whether or not they have the capacity to make that volume, or B, whether or not it's going to be worth their time and effort to try to do that. So the amount of volume is going to be critical as we try to connect up business to business. Target price and unit cost, that's going to be important. Again, that signals to the potential partner whether or not they feel like that they can make some money out of it. And then what's the deadline? When is it needed? Packaging requirements. Depending on the type of product we're talking about, obviously there needs to be specific labels for some of these items, especially if it's food related. But if there's other hazardous materials or anything like that that would be incorporated in the packaging, then that would need to be described. And then another point is, where is the opportunity located? So that brings in distribution channels, also trying to figure out what the cost of freight is. And then are there any specific specialized transportation needs in order to get to a certain spot? So those are some things that, as we initiate a supplier scouting request, we need to know those particular items. Now, if a company sees a request out there and they're responding to that request, the particular items that then they need to communicate is, first of all, if you're the manufacturer, what's your name and address? I mean, this is pretty much simplified information, but what's the point of contact? The name, title, phone, email. How do we get a hold of you? That type of thing. What as a manufacturer, what's your capabilities? Are you an existing AKA client? And the other part is you as a manufacturer, have you been contacted? So one of the things that we run into every once in a while is that we get somebody who would respond back and say, I know that ABC company, I know they manufacture that widget. But if there's nobody at ABC company that knows about this request or this process, then it doesn't really do a whole lot of good. So they need to be contacted. They need to know that that they're being included in this response. Another thing is that there's a blue zillion widgets and gadgets out there, and what we run into a lot of times is there may be a request for a specific item, and it's kind of hard to find that specific item, but there may be a related item. So the question, does the manufacturer produce the exact item requested? We need to identify that. If not, then a similar item could very well suffice. But we'll need to know whether a tool in order to produce the item that's requested. And also, not only will they have to retool, but is this something that the company will have to dedicate a lot of resources toward that brings the volume and the profitability side into it? And then typically we'd like to be able to communicate what items do the manufacturer currently produce. We have some of our manufacturers here in Kentucky that they're pretty diversified. They may specialize in one item, but they can produce quite a few different items, and so that brings the whole basket full of goods into play, and it gives a broader based idea of what that manufacturer is able to do. So those are the things that we typically request whenever we are filling out a response form. So a lot of people don't know about the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, but the MEP has been in play for several decades and has been utilized in a lot of different efforts. And one of those efforts has just recently come to light through an executive order that President Biden signed in January. So on January 25th of this year, President Biden signed an executive order on ensuring the future is made in all of America by all of America's workers. That's what it was titled. And that executive order eliminates many of the waivers used by government purchasers for all types of goods and services. In the past, what has happened, you guys have heard of various Buy American initiatives, and some of those initiatives have put restrictions on government on where they could purchase goods and services. But in the process of executing those different initiatives, the government has been able to get around a lot of those requirements by virtue of just waivers and sidesteps. So this particular executive order eliminates many of those waivers. And to put that in perspective, in 2020, the U.S. government spent $6.5 trillion on goods and services. And that equates up to 31% of the U.S. GDP. And so when you're talking about eliminating waivers for the government to go outside of the borders to purchase goods and services, we're talking about a lot of dollars that would be redirected toward U.S. manufacturers. And that's important to us as a nation. It's important to us in the manufacturing community because obviously it gives us opportunities to grow. And that is one of the reasons why the president signed this executive order. But it's even more specific in that in Section 7 of that executive order, you can see that it basically states, to the extent appropriate and consistent with applicable law, agencies shall partner with the Hollings MEP, Manufacturing Extension Partnership, to conduct supplier scouting in order to identify American companies, including small and medium-sized companies, that are able to produce goods, products, and materials in the United States that meet federal procurement needs. That's straight out of the executive order. So what that executive order is doing is it is designating the MEP National Network to be the conduit for connecting U.S. government purchasers with small to medium-sized companies that are producing widgets, gadgets, providing services, etc. So basically, President Biden recognizes the depth and the breadth of the MEP network to utilize that in order to connect small to medium-sized businesses with U.S. government procurement. And so in that, on one hand, we're thankful that the president recognizes that capability within the national network, but it's a little bit deeper, because if you read some of the highlighted parts, first of all, it says small to medium-sized companies that are able to produce the goods and services, and then also meet federal procurement needs. So having traveled across the Commonwealth for a good while now, and meeting and assisting our manufacturers, I can tell you firsthand, there are a bunch of manufacturers in the Commonwealth that people don't even know about. There's a bunch of manufacturers in the Commonwealth that make unique products that are commonplace in American everyday life, and people don't realize that they're coming from Kentucky. So there's a lot of capability out there, but are those companies set up in order to meet federal procurement needs? Do they have the right certifications? Are they listed on the right databases in order to match up with those needs? Do they meet the volume requirements that the government would be requesting? How do they connect up with prime contractors in order to meet those specifications? So all of those are additional things that Kentucky's manufacturers may not be adept at. And so the other the other part of the value chain that AKA brings to the table is that we have those capabilities to bring those companies not only the opportunities, but also to help them achieve those certifications, help them connect with the right resources in order to be on the right list, as you say, in order to be noticed by government procurement folks. We also have the ability to identify and connect companies with prime contractors so that they can be on their short list when it comes to supplying particular items. So AKA has the ability to do all of that, and that's why it's a huge resource for Kentucky manufacturers. But in relation to President Biden, that's why he looks at the MEP National Network, and by virtue of that, looks to Advantage Kentucky Alliance to be the resource to connect up companies with the state and local, state and federal procurement officials. That being the nuts and the bolts of supplier scouting, I know we've got several people on the line, and what I don't like to do is I don't like to bore people with 55 minutes of slides and then say, okay, give me short, quick questions. And we may not have any questions. I don't have any idea, but what I would like to do is kind of leave some time open so that we can have some discussion on basically what is your supply chain needs and how we might be able to help. So I'm going to stop the share here and then kind of open it up.
Kent, we did have a question come in the chat from Jody. He was wondering if that also applies to services, or is it just goods?
Well, we primarily focus on goods. However, through government procurement, a lot of times the goods and the services, they can kind of get meshed together. So the answer is yes and probably.
That works.
What about, you said there was some certifications and lists that we potentially would need to be on to be looked at for this government reorganization with purchasing in the U.S.
Right.
What list do we need to be on, and is there a list of certifications, or I know that's specific from supplier to supplier, but how do we find out more about that?
Yeah, so that would probably be more one-on-one meetings that you know, the client service manager would have with the client. But in particular, you know, I'm just going to throw out a typical certification would be like ISO 9000 or something like that. And with that, depending on the product, you know, there may be some specialized certifications that go along with that. And as far as lists are concerned, depending on which branch of the government you're looking to help supply, whether it's you know, the Department of Defense, could be the Navy, could be Army, whatever branch, or let's say Department of Homeland Security. You know, we do research projects right now. We got one going with Homeland Security on specific hardware related to actually it ties into defense. So so there's interrelated needs by different departments, and so we want to try to get on those lists for those departments and match off with those needs. Some people may not care anything about defense, but they may be focused on one of the other departments, and so those are some of the lists that I'm talking about, and they may have certification needs that go along with
Is there any type of research available? Like with us, we work on a specific type of piece of equipment that could be used in a lot of different applications throughout the government. And that's, you know, but we don't necessarily know which portions of the government to go looking for that would use this type of equipment. Is there any way to take that piece of equipment and then do some research to find out in the government who's buying for that piece of equipment?
Right. So we at AKA, we provide a service called technology-driven market intelligence. And then kind of the sister to that is technology scouting. And so in the request that you're talking about, you who has a specific item, but you're trying to find markets for that item, that would be driven through technology-driven market intelligence. And we utilize our databases in order to find those potential contacts. And in finding those contacts, we're able to drill it down into to specific people within organizations that you connect with, and then we also help open the doors for you to be able to make those connections and then hopefully sell your product to that specific entity. So that would be technology-driven market intelligence. The tech scouting, on the other hand, is if you have, let's say, a capability, but you're lacking maybe one or two pieces of technology to make that efficient for you or cost effective, then what we can do is we can go out and we can search out that technology. So in the world, there's all sorts of things going on that we we may not know about, but we know that the end result is achieved, and we say, well, how do they do that? We can go out and find that technology to make that happen. So,
Yeah, Stacy, could you or Ken or one of you send me some information on that?
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
whether that be a consultation, if we could set up some time to kind of go over the potential certifications, you know, the list that we need to be on, how we find those lists and how we get on them, and how to do the market research throughout our main focus with this right now, obviously, is the government because of, you know, Biden's executive order. We want to see if there's anything in there for us, because a lot of our competition that we provide service for are foreign companies.
Right. Yeah. Sure, we
You know,
can do that.
Kent, I was thinking, I was not a part of the AKA team yet, but I knew someone that was. And could you kind of go over what happened at the beginning of the pandemic when the government and medical providers were looking for manufacturers who could transition to PPE? What was our role with that?
Yeah, so that was an interesting time. You know, of course, we, like everybody else, things were shutting down, and we were trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we keep operations going? But then all of a sudden, we were also charged with how to keep supply chains running. And so fortunately, we had the databases that we could utilize. And back to Jody's question, those are similar databases that we utilize in the TDMI and the tech scouting process. But we had those databases, and so what we did is we collaborated with different organizations around the state that either had those same types of needs or could contribute to the process. And so through that collaborative effort, the first focus was on PPE. Everybody was searching for it and nobody had it. And so what we did is we utilized our databases and the MEP network to find PPE for Kentucky companies. One example, or I'll give you two examples. Everybody was looking for N95 masks in the very beginning, and at the same time, they were searching N95 masks because the industry was used to using them, and previously there wasn't any type of supply or lack of supply. And so when COVID hit, everybody was screaming N95 masks. Well, nobody really had explored what's a decent substitute. And so what we did is, first of all, we helped companies. We searched throughout the country and found N95 supplies. And then also a lot of people at that time were saying, well, we want domestic supply, not international supply. So we had to drill down further and help companies find those domestic suppliers. And we were able to filter that out and do that. I connected, it was not uncommon for me to connect up with Texas, California, Arizona, Florida some, but usually we were able to go to central distribution points and find those products. Another interesting twist was on the MEP network. I got a request from a company in Alaska, basically saying they were going to start making the PPP goods, but they needed material in order to do that. And they were having a hard time finding the material. But it just so happened that actually here in Western Kentucky, there was a company that produced that material and had the match for what this company in Alaska needed. And so we were able to make that connection, and it helped those two companies out. So in the beginning of COVID, we leveraged our databases pretty strongly. We built that collaborative effort with other organizations here in the state. And we were able to use the MEP National Network to connect companies. Again, companies that never knew each other existed, but found out in a critical time that was a good connection.
I also remember a company that you worked with who had freezer capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately their product was not being distributed as much as it could have been because of the pandemic. And
Mm-hmm.
so I assume that you had put them out in the network as well, because they were interested in getting their company name out in case vaccinations needed to be stored at their facility, or vaccine,
Right.
not vaccinations, but vaccines. So I remember was that part of the process?
Sure. Yeah, and then that would be an example of wanting to know the full breadth of what you as a company does, and in knowing that, different opportunities come down the pike, so. Not only did that company make a particular product, but they also had both technological and physical capabilities to adapt their assets to assist and earn money in different ways. So, yeah, they got hurt in the pandemic. The pandemic originally, but they were able to pivot and through their unique capabilities assist in the vaccination efforts, and kind of the rest is history.
So it can be ongoing, right? You can be an ongoing part of this process, or is it usually just limited to a certain time period?
No, this is not only an ongoing process, but as we can see through the initiative by the president, it's a growing process.
Yeah, another question back to the initiative too. Do you know when that's really going to start in earnest? As far as, is it just as soon as they get the information, they're going to look at vendors? Is there a date or a timeline that they're trying to get this put in place by?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so the timeline as I know it, first of all, I'm on the MEP Supplier Scouting Task Force. So I'm not going to say that I'm in the heart of it, but I get good information. Let's put it that way. And so as I know it, the NIST director is supposed to have his plan of how the MEP network would function with this requirement. He's supposed to have that to the president's desk by we'll say June, July timeframe. Now at that point, there is a director coming from the White House that not just this executive order, but other executive orders. There's a director that kind of manages all this information that's coming in, and then sets up the protocol on how everything will work from there. So with regard to timeline, I know that once that information is provided to the White House, then that director will take it, and I'm guessing that over the next few months after that, that protocol will get set up, and then the government procurement managers will be tasked with meeting that protocol. So I'm saying that probably my best guesstimate is by the end of the year, we're supposed to be operating under that protocol. Now, just as a caveat, what I will say is that that executive order is not going to eliminate all international purchases from the government. But I think just in general, what we can be confident in that right now the government goes around the requirements by a large margin. It's pretty easy to step aside outside of the requirements. And so these waivers that they initiate are going to be reined in to a large degree, and it's going to be much more difficult for them to get out of buying American. Because let's just face it, that's what President Biden he ran his ticket on it. So his campaign was built off of that, and so he's going to try to initiate as much as possible.
Yeah. Do you know what impact cost will have on this? Meaning, if the government's been buying widget A from China for $10, now they have a U.S. supplier, but that same widget is $20. Do they still get it from China because it's cheaper? You know, because labor, manufacturing, everything there's cheaper, which is why everything has been coming out of there for so long. But to have it built in America by Americans, it's probably going to be more expensive. So how much does that play into their decision making?
Yeah, those are specifics that I don't know. What I do know, and I'm going to bring cybersecurity into the conversation just a little bit. We also know that Chinese goods, they are made sometimes by let's just call it what it is, by stealing information and then copying it, and so
I've actually been there and toured some facilities. Trust me, that's definitely a real thing.
So cybersecurity, especially this is being generated through the Department of Defense. Cybersecurity is a huge focus, and new cybersecurity requirements are being put in place by what's called CMMC requirements. And I'm not going to divert into that too much. AKA has a whole side of its operation, whole platform that focuses on helping companies bring their digital platforms up to CMMC requirements. But with respect to what you're talking about, we recognize that China, and not just them, but Russia and some other players, they are not meeting the same requirements that we have in place. And some of those requirements, they carry costs. The federal government understands that, but more importantly, the federal government is looking to utilize homegrown manufacturing in order to help our own economies. So with respect to apples and apples, cost A versus cost B, that's going to be in the details of what's presented to the White House, and then what carries forward. But having said that, I'm not going to have specific answers for cost until all that gets brought out, probably toward the end of the year. Other questions? I see a lot of mute buttons that are on.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions for you either, Kent. You've been very helpful for my education as well on the marketing side, learning a little bit more about how our supplier scouting works. I appreciate that. And I'll make sure that everyone gets an email with the client service managers, regions, their names, and their contact information too. And feel free to, reply to me with any questions you have. I'll put Kent's email on there, of course, because he's a client service manager for the Western Kentucky region. But, you can always reach out to Advantage Kentucky Alliance to ask questions about challenges and growth that, you have coming your way. And then I just also want to tell you that we are going to, Kim, if you'll put that slide up, we have another webinar if anybody is considering or already started the process or already involved in exporting. That's something else that we've been focusing on. with Advantage Kentucky Alliance, and we do have a webinar coming up about exporting, and we will be having a workshop called Export Tech. That's going to be coming up in April. That's an ongoing workshop, basically from, what do they say, soup to nuts, on how to begin exporting. And we basically hold your hand through the process, and there's make sure you're meeting the regulations and things like that. So we just have a plethora of options to help our Kentucky manufacturers. That's what we're here for. And you can always reach out to us. I'm going to send a survey as well. So if you have any ideas on education that you'd like to receive in future webinars, please let me know. I don't know where everybody's coming from today exactly, but hopefully we can walk alongside you to continue to support your endeavors. And are there any other questions for today? Anyone else?
Stacy, if I could jump in and
Sure.
just add on the Export Tech, that is that's a highly valuable and a highly skilled workshop or series, actually, for companies who want to explore exporting or international trade. We have put together a kind of a cadre of highly respected presenters in this. We've got some good sponsorship from other companies. One example coming to mind, FedEx. If you participate in this Export Tech, FedEx has a goodie bag for you, and it's more than chips, crackers, and a notepad. So it's there's a lot of good stuff in it, but more importantly, it will help you as a company go from point A all the way to point Z in relationship to trying to figure out what it is that you're wanting to produce and export, how you find the markets, who do you connect with, how do you get it to that market, and how you make it or how you make that transaction with the end user. So it is a very comprehensive and very valuable tool for those who want to participate in international trade.
Well, and with that, is there anything else anybody needs us to address today? Yeah, we'll send out the link. Kim just said in the chat, we'll send out the link as well with this recording. So, and we have other previous webinars posted on YouTube. So you can always go back and look at that library as well. So, well, thanks, Kent. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Go ahead and sign off now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.